against our 136. And that would have meant that they would have passed the bill. So in order to further frustrate them, the legal advice was that if we are not very certain that we can go in with Asinov, so that will be 137, 137, why don't you rely on the Supreme Court ruling and walk out so that you deny them the quorum that they require to, pass or take a decision that involves the passage of the e-levy. So that was what resulted in that strategy. The fact that we wanted to still, deny them that opportunity of imposing further hardships on the people of Ghana. But they went ahead, they have done it. And look at the haste with which the president has signed this into law. A president who promised moving this country from production to taxation could not wait a day after the bill was passed to, tax further the people of Ghana, even as he refuses to account for the revenue that has accrued to him from other tax handles. You recall that only recently, we on the minority side again moved a motion for us to have a bipartisan, inquiry into the proceeds of COVID. And they refused. They refused. They simply cannot come to accountability. They simply cannot tolerate accountability, even as they demand more revenue and funds from the people of Ghana. So I just hope that people will understand, that this is a government that lied to all of us, that they were going to move us from taxation to production, but are having to rely heavily on taxation now to fund their, very wasteful lifestyles, and not even to our benefit. And that we in the minority, on the issue of e-levy, have used every strategy in the book available to us to deny this government that opportunity of imposing further hardships. And we will continue to pursue the agenda of, opposing government on this until perhaps we exhaust all other opportunities that are available. Let me just end on the opportunities that are open to us, because I've heard some people also argue that we should have exhausted all internal, mechanisms before going to the Supreme Court. Yes, there is the opportunity for us, for example, to have moved a motion for a rescission of what happened last their, numbers. But like I indicated, our decision to walk out was to play them against their previous argument. Now, what has been the arguments of the Speaker of Parliament, Right Honorable Bagwin? He has been consistent on quorum. He has been consistent from day one that presence in Parliament does not necessarily mean presence in the chamber. That has been Speaker Bagwin's position. A position that unfortunately is not law, but that is in contrast with the position of the Supreme Court. He's been consistent. And so our motion of rescission was obviously not going to find favor with Right Honorable Speaker, because he believes that quorum or presence in Parliament is not only the presence in chamber, and that if members are present, and it's a position that we also believed as a minority group. That is why we were very convinced in our position that we correctly rejected the, budget policy. It's a position that we also believe. But our positions are meaningless in the face of the Supreme Court ruling, because that is now the law, that you are required to be present in the chamber. So we did not want to engage in an exercise that was going to end in futility, because clearly the Speaker doesn't think that the Supreme Court is right. And so if you want the Supreme Court to rule on a position that they have espoused, that the Speaker disagrees with, you go to the Supreme Court, you don't go to the Speaker. Because if you go to the speaker will obviously tell you, he will not admit the motion. He will tell you that, look, the number was okay, you know, and he will tell you that is the procedure in Parliament. So we went to the Supreme Court just because we want to test their own ruling. And perhaps that will also expose the absurdities that we have spoken of, including our flag bearer for the 2020 general elections, in the ruling that the Supreme Court gave in the case involving Abdullahi and the Attorney General. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Graphic has been doing some work on, thank you, Sena. Graphic has been doing some work on perhaps some of the things you can expect to happen when the law kicks in. We understand it may start on May 1. A couple of you have already started withdrawing your monies from your mobile monies, have decided to go cash and are leaving the cashless agenda. This is what the graphic lists as the things that will be affected. They say, 1, transfer done on the same mobile money network, for example, sending money from your MTN Momo wallet to another person's MTN Momo wallet. 2, transfers from one mobile money network to a recipient on another network, for example, sending money from your MTN Momo wallet to another person's Tigo Cash wallet. 3, transfers from bank accounts to mobile money accounts. For example, Kofi transfers money from his CBG bank account to Ama's MTN mobile money wallet. 4, transfers from mobile money accounts to bank accounts. For example, they give an example. AC transfers money from a Vodafone Cash money wallet to Yao's GCB bank account. And the 5th one they identify is bank transfers on digital platform or application which originate from a bank account belonging to an individual. For example, Kwame transferring from his NIB bank account to a QS Prudential bank account. So that's graphic just trying to take us to 5 ways to which the e-levy will apply. It already passed into law. But let me acknowledge Diamond FM is on 93.7 FM in 93.7. That's the frequency in Tamale. Someone accosted me somewhere this week and was drawing my attention to the fact that what I am supposed to do is tell them if I am going to Tamale, which frequency do I tune to listen to Alhaji and Alhaji. And I think there's a point. So Diamond FM is on 93.7 in Tamale if you're moving there. Bawa Radio is 106.5, is in Yendi. Radio Kitaon is in Saboba, 95.7 FM is their frequency. Hills FM in Adaklu, 91.7. There's Nyawasi FM in Ketekrachi, 89.7. There's Cape FM, which is 93.3. And there's Benya FM, 105.7. is in Elmina. Cape FM is in Cape Coast, by the way. Big thank you to all of them, and thank you for providing your platform for us. I'll read a few messages after I've heard from Beatrice. Good morning.
Good morning to our viewers and listeners. I must say that I am happy to be here. Today is my first day of being here. And as a teenager, I would listen to Uncle Kwesi Pratt, Ambassador Sampiale, Owula Mangote, and I would say that this is exciting. Maybe I should do some. And I'm happy that for me, I don't know, I'm even shaken because it's like a dream come true for me, and I'm happy. And for some reason, Suhini was the host. And so every Saturday you hear him say, Mother of All Talk Show, be an active listener and not a passive one. And so I'm excited to be here. And the Honorable Member has spoken a lot about what happened in Parliament and the events leading up. And I know that there is a mixed feeling out there about the position of the minority. I would want to say that the attempt by this government leading up to the passage of the e-levy into a law and even events afterwards only demonstrate how reckless and insensitive this government can be. And sometimes when you listen to government spokespersons and government communicators, it's as though there is no plan. I mean, the government doesn't have a plan. As a knee-jerk government, when we get to a stage that we don't have money, let's impose anything, irrespective of the implication and the rippling effect on the people of Ghana. Because on one breath, we are told that the government admits the economy is so hard and things are so worse, perhaps the worst economic condition in the Fourth Republic, or I have experienced in my adult life, and yet you seek to impose the same regressive tax in an economy that you concede is not doing well. Because if economies are doing well, goods and services will be moving, money will be moving, and businesses are growing. But you have an economy where unemployment is at its highest in about 3 decades. So when people are not employed in a system such as ours, and the little they have by way of electronic money, you decide to take some away in the form of tax because you need money, then I begin to wonder whether, members of this government were the men that the MPP promised that. The men, we heard in the run-up to the 2016 election, we have the men, we have the women, we know how to govern. Is this the kind of governance that they promise? And so I would say that we have never in our history experienced the kind of haphazard governance that we are experiencing. And it is bad both for our image on the international financial market. It is bad for the economy of Ghana as well. Because let me tell you, taxation and admittedly every government would have to impose some form of taxation to be able to function properly as a government, because taxation becomes a major source of revenue for every government. But the world over, taxes are imposed on either consumption, so that when you're buying something you pay VAT, or taxes are imposed on services or on wealth. Nowhere do people or government impose taxes on savings, because taxes on savings, in the manner in which this government seeks to do, is just taxing the people into poverty. And so civil society organization, I have heard some tax experts say that this tax is regressive. This is not the form of taxation that will even encourage people to pay tax. This tax, we will all find a way to avoid tax, because in law we say that tax avoidance is no crime. And so if I have 1,000 cedis this morning and I want to send to my little sister, I will not send via mobile money. I would either ask her to come home and take the money, or take any time we meet, I'll give her the money. And so when you do that, the same government that ironically says it is promoting an electronic economy or an e-economy, and looking at the action of the government, it just doesn't sit well with me. It's not adding up. And so maybe there is a second reason or there are some other reasons why government is doing this and we are not being told. But let me also allay the fears of, or let me, not even to allay the fears, but let me say that the previous communication by members of government that the introduction of this tax will be a remedy to all the series of incompetence in various sectors we are experiencing cannot be the case. At best, those who will benefit from this e-levy is the finance minister and his deputy. Why do I say this? So now you know that sometime this year, Fitch, Moody's, S&P downgraded Ghana. We have any positive outlook on the international financial market. And if you look at a government that has the penchant for borrowing, this government has borrowed even onto the 10th generation. If we were to pay the debt, it would probably take us a century to finish paying its debt. So government doesn't have a good name on the international financial market. In fact, if you monitor the space, you realize that investors do not have confidence that the government can meet its repayment obligations. And so people are not buying government bonds. Even those who are holding government bonds, especially foreign investors, have had to sell out the bonds. And there's a reason at a point you saw the dollar was almost hitting 9 cedis, because people are taking their money out of the system. And so what the government is doing with the e-levy is that it is simply telling the international community or the financial markets that, you guys, look, we've imposed an extra hardship on our citizens. We expect to generate some 6.9 billion. And so irrespective of the fact that our debt to GDP is 81% plus, irrespective of the fact that we've borrowed to a tune of about 351 billion, we have a new stream of income coming in, and so please lend us money. And that is why in the finance minister's statement, sometime I think 17th March, he indicated that they were going to borrow an extra $2 billion to pay external obligation. That $2 billion, which is about 15 billion cedis, is not even to develop Ghana, to provide jobs. In the statement, it says that to meet external debt obligation. So in essence, government is imposing e-levy to enable governments borrow more to pay interest and amortization. Who runs an economy in the manner in which this government is running? Especially when we were told that the vice president was our economic whiz kid and our economic messiah. No serious economist will impose taxes only to borrow with those taxes to pay previous borrowings. I just don't even get it. And I would, in the course of the discussion, I will show you why the situation may even get worse. Because if you look at the 2022 budget that was presented to Parliament, inclusive of e-levy, the government estimated to generate a revenue of 105 billion. That's revenue government cannot generate. But let's assume that government can generate that 105 billion. The total expenditure of government is some 137 billion. So from the word go, we have in excess of 36.5 billion cedis as budget deficit from the word go. Now, out of this money, the government budgeted 16 billion for capex, what we call capital expenditure, expenditure that runs beyond a year. So maybe building, and this government is not even doing any infrastructural development that we know of. When you challenge its communicators and government officials to even name a single polyclinic or district hospital, they cannot even mention one. But be that as it may, they budgeted 16 billion for capex. They budgeted some 9 billion to buy goods and services. Now, we are told that as a way of imposing the e-levy to bring us some comfort, the government is going to cut down expenditure so that they are doing burden sharing. Now, that expenditure, earlier we were told that the government will cut some 20%. And then in the statements, we were told that an additional 10%. If you do the mathematics, government cannot touch salaries or what we call compensation. It is fixed. Government cannot touch amortization. it is fixed. Government cannot touch statutory funds because these are prescriptions by law. So practically, what government can do by the reduction of the 30% they have promised us is to just touch the capex and the goods and services. Now, the 30% of the total of 25 billion of capex and goods and services will give us some 7.5 billion. So that would have been the savings that we will be making. And so one would have been excited, the government having announced all these things under the guise of e-levy and raising revenue so they can cut expenditure. But this is the trick. While government cut 7.5 billion from the announcements they have made, the government tells us that they are going to borrow 2 billion, which is 15 billion. However, in the budget, the real allocation for such external borrowing was just $750 million. And so if you do the calculation, the government will be adding some over 10 billion cedis by way of debt. Does it make sense that the government cut 7.5 by way of cutting expenditure and add an additional 10 billion to an already budgeted expenditure or an already bloated budget, and we are told we should clap for this government? So the e-levy is just, an avenue for the finance minister, who is the owner of Data Bank and who are book runners of this government anytime we've had to borrow from the international market, to make his 2.5% of whatever figure we are going to borrow. Or the deputy finance minister, who is also another book runner, whose company practically in 2017 was not even making up to 50,000 cedis, but now is worth billions of cedis to benefit. And so that is the main reason behind it. So you can understand, Honorable Suini should understand that if the government seeks to benefit in the manner in which they want to benefit from the e-levy, they will do everything, including employing legal gymnastics to get some of our MPs out. It is not only the Honorable Kwesi, some other MPs are being threatening. Honorable Atuforson is before the court, and some others are being threatened, undergoing some frivolous investigations just to put fear in people and let the government, have its way. Because I am not shocked, because this is a government that practically pushed a japa through down the throats of Ghanaians because some family and friends have to benefit. And so if you look at everything that is happening, you will know that there is no glimmer of hope for the people of Ghana who for some reason believe that in a post-COVID economy, lives should be changing. There is no glimmer of hope for the workers who used to work in the banking sector, who lost their jobs because government did not like certain elements who own banks. There is no hope for young people. And one of the main arguments that the finance minister has put forward for the e-levy is what he believes will be job creation for the youth. And I was initially happy that, if this e-levy may create jobs for the youth, maybe we should take a second look at it. And so I began to search for what was government's plan for the youth. In the 2022 budget, the government planned that it was going to allocate 1 billion cedis to provide employment for young people. But if you go to the appendices and look at the details, you will be shocked that this government has no plans to provide any meaningful job for any young person out there. Because out of that 1 billion, the government only allocation from, internally generated fund is 385 million. And if you look at monies that government has used to buy nose masks, hand sanitizers and tissue paper. The total for the year 2021 is 497 million. So you are a government and you use 497 million to buy nose masks, hand sanitizers, and tissue paper. And when it comes to about 5 million young people, or even more than 5 million young people who need jobs, you budget 385 million. It shows that the government prioritizes nose mask over the living conditions of the young people. And so the e-levy is not going to alleviate poverty. It is not going to make the lives of the young people better. And it simply will not do anything to remedy the wrongs that we have experienced under this government, because the government even has a lot of shifting tongues when it comes to what it would do with the e-levy. I've heard a lot of people say that the e-levy is like a herbal medicine, it cures every sickness. The roads minister says that e-levy will be used to provide roads. The agric minister says that e-levy will be used to boost agricultural produce and planting for food and jobs. The communication minister says e-levy will be used to do something else. And every minister seems to be banging their hope on the e-levy. But the reason I am even more skeptical that this is just a way of dissipating the public resources by taking from the already deprived citizen is because, so now we are told that the entire budget expenditure for COVID from the year 2020 to 2022 is 17.7 billion. Meanwhile, if you look at the cash inflows because of the COVID, it is 36 billion cedis. The World Bank gave us 2 billion. The IMF gave us 430 million. Governments only declared 100 million, and the World Bank director had to come and expose government. The European Union gave us about 85 million euros. We had 20 billion from the Bank of Ghana. When you do all these calculations, you have roughly a figure of about 36 billion. So if we have used 17.7 billion for the entire year, that figure is inaccurate. And when we come to the State of the Nation's address topic, I'll address that thing. But assuming we were to go by government's own figures, where is the 18.3 billion that was left from what we received by way of revenue from the COVID funds? And all these monies are even exclusive of what corporate Ghana individuals contributed to the COVID funds. And so for me, it appears to be the height of insensitivity, because if you're a government and you've received 36 billion cedis and you claim to have used only 17.7, then you have an excess of some 18.3 billion, which is about this is about times 3 of what you seek to generate from the e-levy. So why do you have to impose an extra hardship if by your own mathematics you should have these surplus money, for want of a better expression there? It shows you that there are too many leakages that the government has created to benefit family and friends and not the people. And so it is not surprising that some 600 million of COVID funds cannot be accounted for. Nobody knows where that money is. It is not surprising that the government will do everything, including breaching laws, the very laws the president swore to uphold and abide by, because this government has a penchant for dissipating public resources. And let me show you why I say this. If you look at the Auditor General's report for the year 2021, sometime in 2017, in 2016, which is an election year, and we expect that government to spend and leakages will happen, we had financial irregularity amounting to 718 million. I say that figure is still high. When we come to 2020, that figure ballooned to 12 billion. And from 2017 to 2021, under this government, cumulatively, some 33 billion cedis have gone down the drain into pockets of friends and associates of this government. So if you create such holes, because we are told that only Mr. ABAJ, who in all his life could not work to even save up to 50,000 cedis, by the Shraj report, he had cumulatively 15 million cedis passing through his accounts within a space of 2 years. 15 million cedis, that's a lot of money. So you can imagine that if you had the likes of ABAJ, 10 of them in this government, that's about 150 million. And so if the government will not be committed to fight corruption, if the government will not be committed to seal these leakages, the e-levy will be like fetching a water into a basket. It will pass through, the people of Ghana will not benefit. And I have consistently made the point that if the government was a government that was on a development drive, and the government seeks to impose e-levy, I would have said that it is taken back from the people and given it back to them. But this government, in the area of power generation, they have not added a single megawatt. In the area of health, the government has not been able to build a single district hospital, regional hospital, or even polyclinic. The people of Labadi, I sometimes even feel sad, because a polyclinic that was serving them, this government, like I've said, is a knee-jerk government. I mean, bulldoze down the hospital with nothing to replace for over 2 years now. In the area of education, the government has not built any schools. In the area of infrastructure, we have not experienced so much. In fact, even the ones that they tout are projects which were begun by President John Mahama. And so if you are not doing any infrastructural development, it is no wonder their allocation for CAPEX is 16 billion. Meanwhile, COVID expenditure alone was 17.7 billion, which means that they spent more on buying things that will support nose masks and food and other things than they have invested in trying to develop this country when it comes to infrastructure. And so if you have a government like this and you are a citizen of Ghana watching me this morning, you should be worried, because admittedly, governments may not be able to solve every issue during its tenure, but every government, including even past NPP government, will begin to do something to add on to what they came to meet. But this is the only government that, despite introducing more taxes than any, this government has introduced over 21 new taxes. Despite introducing new taxes, have also depleted every statutory fund and every economic buffer. Get fund, we have, collateralized it. Road fund, we don't even know what to say about it. Every statutory fund. The stabilization fund that the NDC government and President John Mahama had the vision that let's save revenues from our oil proceeds so that in times of need, we will fall on. In times when the country is in crisis, the moment we recorded 3 cases of COVID, this government said, we are in deep crisis. They depleted it. And they haven't even created a single fund. So this government does not even have savings. So if COVID-22 should come, we are doomed. Because even with the COVID-19, we are still struggling to find our feet. And so I am worried that if you're a government who is actually not doing anything, you should not impose a regressive tax such as e-levy. You should not further burden the people when your people's living standard are becoming poorer than it were when you assumed office.
For her birthday and it's asking for cake. The only way I'll give you a cake. I don't have the e-levy cake though. Maybe you can do an e-levy dance. Sape Agbo is joining us, sending some message through Facebook. He says, Sena, listening to Asiche Mensah-Bonsu, I was amazed at the trend of his argument. It's true the country is in dire straits due to the unbridled taste of Ken Ofori-Atta to borrow for consumption by extinction the commission that will accrue to his companies. What tangible evidence does the Nana Akufo-Addo administration has to show as to how the monies borrowed were utilized? I also listened to Haruna Idrisu in terms of the question of quorum. If I may ask, whose duty is it in Parliament to ensure that the question of composition of a quorum is established? If there was no quorum, why didn't the Speaker request a head count to establish whether a quorum was formed or not? Why is no one questioning the Speaker? Alasan Sile says, good morning. Says the NDC MPs have done their best and need to be commended. Magdo says the case before the Supreme Court is the test case of our judiciary system and justice delivery in the country. Ghanaians will now know whether the justices are political judges or not. As for the majority, the least said about them, the better. If their constituents will vote for them again, we live to see. Send down from Alhaji. Nyodoi is also joining us. Says, we are highly disappointed in you. The NDC MP is very shameful to you all playing with Ghanaian hearts. Time will judge you all. That's Nyodoi. Suleiman Abdul Rahim says, a special good morning. Says that the fact of the matter is, so this is to Mr. Pratt. Says the fact of the matter is he has taken journalism to another level in this country. Take it or leave it. Gafaro Jantong is joining us, saying a good morning. Says Ghanaians should blame MPP for the e-levy issues than blaming NDC MP's walkout. Sena, teachers are suffering, nurses are suffering, farmers are suffering, students are suffering, and traders are suffering. All this said by Dr. Baumia. And today, what has changed? May Allah save us from this mismanagement, e-levy government, and bring back John Mahama and NDC to save Mother Ghana. Senior Boham is also joining us. Says the NDC MPs cannot say the passage of the e-levy doesn't have their tacit approval. Can they sign an undertaking that they will reverse it when they win in 2024? I'm revising my decision on who to vote for in the next general elections. Franz Godon is also joining us. From says Azan Kwan from Parliament. We know majority and minority acting in a way to approve e-levy. It says Ghana is sick and needs urgent care. I tell you. Cyprus V Virus says, Sena, thanks for bringing Beatrice Anna on the show. She's pure gold and a joy to listen to. The show is richer for her presence and great communication skills. We learn a lot from her presentations. That is coming from Cyrus V Virus. Leviticus Power in Kaswa says, e-levy is the best funding alternative than anything from the IMF. President Anado is delivering. There's Abakar Tajudin says, I don't know why they are saying we will be accountable. It is because they know Ghanaians don't trust them. Neo Peter says, Supreme Chamber. Okay. Now, I think there's also Geomar says the strategy of walkout and going to court was myopic thinking by the minority side. Can we say the minority was deceived by an empty ambulance? So now, do you know some minority members you allege were tempted with bribes? It's a shameful and childish reason to have hope in court that has never been by their side. Dennis Akwete is also joining us. So I get disappointed sometimes when some NDC people speak on the monstrous e-levy to suggest that Ghanaians are only against the e-levy because of the non-accountability disposition of government. And I wonder which government in history had not been accused of non-accountability, including the NDC, even by its own founder, to mean that the e-levy is a task properly so-called. When many others of the NDC, including its communication officer, had made it clear, and rightly so, that e-levy does not pass any principle of tax and must be rejected. That said, it was a paradox for President Anado to use his birthday to scorn the ordinary suffering Ghanaians with passage of the monstrous e-levy, and posterity will remember him for that, irrespective of what comes out of court. Thought it can be predicted. Suman Kavini says, I agree with the decision of the minority to take the issue to the Supreme Court, not because I have faith in the ability to deliver justice, but because it will once again expose them for what they actually are. There's Master Red in Kaswa says Ghanaians are happy. and trust that the leadership of visionary Nana Bawumia, the A-levy will be used to develop the nation Ghana for the next generation. Long live Ghana, long live. Okay. Thank you. There's Walanyo Nakotia who says E-levy is passed and I want NDC to come out publicly to tell us they will abolish E-levy if in a likely event they come to power. Why is NDC not straightforward on the issues of abolishment of E-levy if they find their way into government? And someone sent me this from...
I'm sorry I have to butt in like that, but that is the second time some, listener is raising the question of the position of the NDC. Should we win power? You recall the last demonstration that was organized by the youth wing of the party against the e-levy. The General Secretary of the NDC made a pledge and a commitment on behalf of the party that it will be one of the first, things that we will abolish in the first 100 days in office. So it's a position that was stated by the no less a person than the General Secretary of the party. And as we speak today, in the absence of a flag bearer, you know the role that a General Secretary plays. So it's unfair to say that we don't have a position on what we will do with the e-levy. We don't think it's a tax handle. We think it is distorting our tax policy in this country. Okay. And so it has to be looked at.
Thank you. But I think Bishush was talking about is it Data Bank and Black Star Brokerage, and somebody sent me this from the Bank of Ghana, 12 May 2021, after undertaking a review of the primary dealer system, the Ministry of Finance invited banks and non-banks to apply to be PDS, which are licensed primary dealers and bond market specialists. Following the evaluation of the applications received, the following have been selected. Yes. Black Star Brokerage Limited and Data Bank Brokerage Limited were in both category, primary dealers and bond market specialists. That was sent to me. Mr. Pratt?
Well, I mean, a discussion of the e-levy should not be that simple. I actually think that it is very, very complicated. And it brings to the fore many, many, many issues about our governance system, our practice of democracy, the sincerity of government, the role that is expected of the opposition, whether or not policy decisions are sensible. It has so many dimensions. In discussing the passage of e-levy, I think that one of the things that comes up immediately for consideration is the practice in Parliament, how Parliament carries out its functions. Since 1992, we have always assumed that in Parliament there will be a majority and there will be a minority. How we came to that assumption is strange. So the standing orders, everything in Parliament is shaped around a majority and a minority. And the current problems we're getting spring from that. They spring clearly from this conception of a Parliament being made up of a majority and a minority. In the early stages of Parliament's own, the Speaker was called upon to make a ruling. And the Speaker decided that in spite of the current composition of Parliament, there is still a majority and there is still a minority. And when the Speaker announced his ruling, my goodness, I couldn't believe what was happening. First of all, you have a Parliament which frowns on the crossing of carpets. I'm sure you all know the history of this Parliament. That if you are elected into Parliament on a ticket of a political party, you cannot, by your own volition, once you have entered Parliament, decide to join another political party. I would have thought that that would also mean that if you're elected as an independent candidate and you enter parliament, your independence cannot be compromised that easily. But then we decided that, look, there is no majority party in parliament, but there's a majority group in parliament, and that majority group in parliament includes somebody who has been elected into parliament as an independent. And I've been searching for the logic behind this maneuver, and for all these months, I have failed to find the logic. Everything I've found is illogical. But that is where we are, you understand? Now, it is because we are still playing the majority and the minority game that numbers have become important. That we are no longer seeking for consensus building. That we are no longer interested in reaching compromises. That we are still engaged in what in local parlance is referred to as buga buga. That's where we are. And if you look at the passage or the assumed passage of the e-levy bill, this picture is very, very clear. You understand? Now, look at the day of the event and look at what happened in this country. You know, I have friends who are members of parliament from the northern region of Ghana. Now, government had no doubt, government knew that it was going to introduce the e-levy bill in parliament on that day. They then decided to commission the Tamale overpass, which has been misnamed Tamale Interchange, and deliberately invited members of parliament from Tamale and surrounding areas to attend that function. Now, if members of parliament from Tamale and surrounding areas had not been prompted that the e-levy bill was about to be introduced and so on, they would have left parliament. That was part of the game plan. That morning, I met one of my friends, Mutala, Mohammed. I said, Mutala, what are you doing in Accra? You are supposed to be in Tamale for the commissioning of the overpass and so on. He said, well, last night I got information that the e-levy bill was about to be introduced. That was part of the game plan. You understand? It wasn't just that. Now, all of us knew beforehand that Honorable Adwa Safo was not going to be in parliament. You understand? All of us knew beforehand that she was not going to be in parliament. Now, if she was not going to be in parliament, in a parliament of 275 members, then even with the addition of the independent candidate, what we were going to get was 137, 137. And based on the rules in parliament, if there was a vote was taken, and just 137, 137, the bill fails. Now, to achieve 137, 137, they actually created the impression that the member of parliament who is indisposed and who we all believe could not vote had actually been brought to parliament to come and vote by driving an ambulance into the precincts of parliament. Whether the member of parliament was in the ambulance or not, nobody can tell. But nobody could gamble. Because if you gambled and the member of parliament was pulled out of the ambulance on a stretcher and pushed into parliament, you would have lost the gamble. That was part of the game plan. Now, they also carefully chose that day because on that day, an NDC member of parliament was supposed to be in court, was actually in court. So all of these factors went into the determination of the day on which the e-levy bill was to be introduced. So if you take out the indisposed member of parliament on the so-called majority side and take out the NDC member of parliament who was in court, you now had a situation of 136, 136, and so on. So I'm just saying all of these things to see the kinds of calculations which went into choosing the day. Why do we do all of this? All of this maneuvering? You know, Sena, in 1995, the Rawlings government wanted to introduce the value-added tax. The Rawlings government had a majority in parliament and could very easily have pushed the bill through parliament. Watch the difference. We demonstrated against the value-added tax. We were not parliamentarians. We were ordinary citizens who took to the streets. The Rawlings government immediately withdrew the value-added tax, went back to the drawing board, made substantial changes, engaged in consultation, in fact, changed the very nature of the tax they wanted to introduce in order to get it passed. The Rawlings government did not abuse its majority in parliament. It recognized that public sentiment was against the value-added tax and took measures to assuage the fears of the public. Compare that to what is happening today. Just do a comparison of what is happening today. I recall that sometime in the 70s, the Liman administration took its budget to parliament, okay? 2 members of parliament from government were in Parliament House. They were in Parliament House. They were not absent. They were in Parliament House. But they had gone to respond to nature's call. And the doors were shut for a vote. Government lost. The budget presented by the Liman administration was not accepted by Parliament. What did the Liman administration do? Look at the circumstances. The Liman administration withdrew the budget. They went and worked on it, made amendments and so on, and brought it back to Parliament for approval. They could have done what this government is doing. They could have marshaled their numbers. They could have chosen a date on which one person from the opposition was sick. They could have chosen a date on which one person from the opposition was before court. They could have done all the things that this government is doing. Dr. Hila Liman and his administration decided that once the budget could not go through for the first time, they needed to work on the budget in order to achieve a certain consensus, a certain compromise, to preserve the integrity of Parliament itself and also the integrity of government itself. I hope you see the difference. The difference is very clear, okay? Now, there's another angle to all this e-levy business. And I've heard many government commentators say that, look, we need the e-levy. There's a hole in the budget that we have to fill. And one of the ways of filling this hole is simply to impose the e-levy on the people of Ghana. And I've even heard some of them say that, look, if we don't impose this e-levy, we are going to borrow from outside the country, and that it is wiser and better to impose a tax on Ghanaians than to borrow. And I said to myself, my goodness, what are these people saying? This this government has been in power for 5 years. For 5 years, they've been borrowing and borrowing and borrowing and borrowing. When did they realize that imposing a tax so that Ghanaians will pay for their development is better than borrowing? When did that realization dawn on them? I can't believe it. So all the time they were borrowing, they knew that they were doing something terrible, something wrong. So all the time they were borrowing, there was an alternative to borrowing, which was more sensible. So all the time they were borrowing, there was an alternative to borrowing, which was better for the Ghanaian economy. I can't believe it, but this is what they are saying. I am not the one saying it. Government communicators, ministers, and so on, are saying that borrowing is a problem, it's bad. And that rather than borrow, let's impose taxes like the e-levy. So, can't believe it. But they are saying it. Now, we need to ask ourselves, how come that the hole in the economy is getting deeper and deeper? How come? IFS says that we actually need 128% of total national revenue to service debts and to pay public sector emolument. That's how deep the hole is. You understand? That's how deep the hole is. Now, some people have said that the imposition of the e-levy is to enable us to fill this hole. I doubt. Because there are people in government who are coming to us, who attend the cabinet meetings, who were in the cabinet meeting which approved the e-levy bill, who have come to us and said, no, don't mind the finance minister. That's not what we want to do. The roads minister stood up in parliament and said, look, we want the e-levy to pass so that we can use it as a collateral to borrow more. So who is telling us the truth? The finance minister or the roads minister? And if indeed what the roads minister is telling us is true, then what we are being given is not an option between borrowing and taxation. In fact, they will all end up leading us more and more to more lenders and more borrowing. But you know what is interesting? After the statement by the roads minister, nobody has queried him. He is still at post. If he lied to embarrass the government, why is the roads minister still at post? There must be some truth in what the road minister said. And if there's some truth in what the road minister said, trouble they come. We are going to borrow more. We are going to dig deeper in the economy. The hole is going to become bigger. That would simply mean that we are imposing a tax which we shall use as collateral in borrowing more to pay what we have already borrowed. Simply put, that is what it will mean. Now, if that is what it is going to mean, then the question which arises, is simple. The ministers, Minister Information, Minister Finance, Minister Community, who are coming up to tell us that you need the e-levy so that we can build more roads, are they telling us the truth? The ministers, the government officials, government spokespersons who are coming to tell us that if we pay the e-levy, they will be able to pay contractors. Are they telling us the truth? The ministers who are coming to tell us that without e-levy, our health system will collapse. Are they telling us the truth? Common sense. I love common sense. I believe in common sense. If you just apply a little bit of common sense, you begin to see the charade that this whole e-levy business is about. And at least you begin to suspect that somebody is not telling us the truth about e-levy and so on. Now, Sena, nobody today doubts the fact that the state of the national economy is terrible. Even the president admits it. So now there's no contention about the state of the national economy. We all agree the national economy has collapsed. We all agree. There's no contention at all about it. Okay. Only a couple of weeks ago, the president, the vice president, the ministers, and key functionaries of government decided that the problem of the national economy has become so big, so troublesome, that maybe if they go and sit in Jubilee House to discuss it, they won't get the necessary results. That they need to take themselves out of the community. They need to seclude themselves to engage in serious brainstorming. They want to brainstorm. They want to crack their brains to find the best solution to the economic problems that we are faced with. Sena, the brainstorming session took them 4 long days. 4 long days. Not a few hours, not a day, not 2 days, not 3 days, 4 days. With the president presiding, with the presence of the finance minister, everybody was there. And they cracked their brains for 4 long days. At the end of the 4th day, they came to us. In fact, they sent the Minister for Information to us to say, look, Charlie, we have cracked our brains for 4 days. We have found the solution. But give us a few more days. Because even though we have cracked our brains for 4 days and we think we have found the solution, we need to cross-check with industry players and so on, some consultation. And that at the end of the consultation, the Oga himself, the Minister of Finance himself, the Yale-trained Minister of Finance will come and announce the outcome of 4 days of brain cracking. Hey! We're all sitting down with bated breath. Something wonderful was going to happen. Finally, the Minister of Finance came to us and he said some very wonderful things. One of the things he said was that from now on, all these ministers and government appointees and so on, we will not allow them to travel by heart. That they would only embark on important travels. I said, hey, 4 days of brain cracking? So all the time they were traveling, they knew that some of the travels they were engaged in were useless. They didn't benefit us in any way. Useless travels, by heart traveling. Okay, we accept that. If you have come to realize that by heart traveling is not good, and that you only do essential travels, maybe that will save a few coins and so on. We will accept that and move forward. Then the minister told us something too very, very interesting. He said, the president has directed, after 4 days of brain cracking in Peduasi on that mountain, they actually went to a mountain top and cracked their brains for 4 days. That the president has directed that the buying of cars by heart should also stop. Sena, I'm sitting in front of my television set and I'm wondering whether I'm in cuckoo's land. One of the very first promises the president made on assumption of office was that the purchase of vehicles, especially four-wheel drive, should stop. One of the very first directives was that ministers were not even allowed to drive four-wheel drives in the city, and that they should use saloon cars and so on. After 5 years, that same thing is brought to us as a solution to the economic problem. So the last 5 years, what were they doing with the first directive? I couldn't believe it. Now for me, that retreat and its outcome, what it demonstrates is that the solution to the problems that confront us in the economy cannot be found in the Jubilee House. They cannot even be found on the mountain top at Pidiasi. Something is fundamentally wrong. Now, even this morning as we sit here, we are getting text messages suggesting to us that the imposition of the e-levy is the answer to the economic problems that we are getting. And I'm wondering, look, even in secondary school we do economics. Alhaji? Secondary school we do economics. So how many secondary schools do we have? How many people have been through our secondary schools and so on? How many people have been through the economics departments of our universities? And if at the end of all of this, we think that the economic problems we are having can be solved by the imposition of e-levy, then our educational system has completely failed us. Because why do we have these economic problems? These economic problems are a manifestation of our colonial past and our neo-colonial present. Finish. The unfair international economic order, the imbalance in trade and so on, is what is responsible for our current state, our current economic state. That is not solved by the imposition of e-levies. My brother, I'm going to repeat myself again. Ghana is the largest producer of gold in Africa. The fifth largest producer of gold in the world. How much are we getting out of gold production? That is where the problem is. To what extent do we control the gold which is embedded in our soil? When we dig that gold, how much do we get out of it? If you're getting only 2% of the value of gold that is dug from your soil and exported, why would you not have a huge hole in the national economy? How does the imposition of e-levy address this major problem of inequality in international trade? E-levy does not address that problem. Last week, we were told that Ghana is importing cassava from China. And some people were so shocked, it became a major issue. Hey, so we are importing cassava from China. What happened to us? And so on. Then Herr Pristo, the Minister of Agriculture who is aspiring to become President of the Republic, came out and said, don't worry. Yes, we are importing cassava, but we are only importing cassava which is used for making starch. Is that not cassava? Is that not cassava? How come that Ghana, a tropical country, with all kinds of rivers crisscrossing our land, is unable to produce cassava, whether it is for making chips, pounding fufu, or making starch? How come? That is the problem. That is the problem. Look, as we speak, Ghana is the third largest importer. Number 3. The third largest importer of tomato paste from Germany, the whole world. Ghana is the third largest importer of tomato paste. We are importing contombre. We are importing tilapia. We are importing tilapia. To cap it all, we are actually importing guinea fowls from Denmark. This is the problem of the national economy. This is why there's such a huge hole in the national economy. So, how does e-levy address this? And then you hear some things, my brother. Sometimes you hear some things. So, yesterday, I heard a very prominent member of government say, but that is why we have brought 1D, 1F. That is why we have brought 1D, 1F. And I'm sitting back and looking at all the projects which have been announced as 1D, 1F, and so on. Unfortunately for us in the studio today is Honorable Suhini, who knows Tamale very well, and who I'm sure would not deny the fact that one of the 1D, 1F factories commissioned in Tamale is a motor king assembling plant which existed 12 years before this government came into power. How does that address the problem? So how does that address the problem? Now, Sohini, you see, this whole thing about 1D, 1F, one district, one factory, to be honest with you, it doesn't make sense. Why doesn't it make sense? It doesn't make sense because we are counting factories instead of counting the impact that factories make. You see, we established the Atwabo gas plant. It is only one factory in only one district. Atwabo gas plant has reduced our foreign exchange expenditure on gas and related products by about 40%. One factory in one district. That's a big dream. You understand? So it is possible to establish only one, only two, only 5, only 10 factories whose impact on the national economy will be far greater than 20,000 factories established in all the districts. I hope you understand what I mean. So the emphasis is not or should not be to put a factory in every district. The emphasis should be on building factories which reduce our reliance on imports in substantial ways that affect our economic standing. That's why 1D, 1F is problematic. Now, Sohini, yesterday I heard things, yesterday I heard many things. One of my very, very good friends, who is a very leading member of this administration, was actually in a radio station and talking about how God is behind the president and how God has made it possible to pass the e-levy bill. As for God, he would never disappoint His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. And I'm listening to this friend of mine. I'm saying that, hey, Master, The Bible, we have all read some. And even a basic elementary reading of the Bible does not suggest that God joins political parties. But our friends are ready to make God a card-bearing member of the New Patriotic Party. And I wonder, what kind of God is that? A God who is a card-bearing member of the New Patriotic Party. A God who doesn't like PNC. A God who hates the CPP. A God who wants the NDC to stay in opposition forever. My goodness, that's no God. It is no God at all. But our friends, when they get desperate, they do all kinds of things, including giving their membership card to God Almighty. They do that. You understand? Suhimi. Hey, Mrs. Suhimi. Master, this e-levy bill, I'm saying that if you look at it very carefully, it throws up all kinds of things. One of the other things that I've heard is that, look, governments have to be tough. That governments, they don't have to take measures which are pleasant. They have to be tough. And I'm saying to myself, where is that thing coming from? Governments being tough. There is no principle of governance, whether under the capitalist dispensation or under the socialist dispensation, which says that governments ought to do what the people don't like. Every principle of governance that I know emphasizes the point that governments are tools in the hands of the people. And that the power they actually exercise is power which belongs to the people. And that governments, if they fail to do the will of the people, must be kicked out. That's the principle of governance that I know. I don't know about any other principle of governance. In this moment of desperation, you're actually being told that good governance or good government is one who decides to go against the people and to take tough decisions. The arrogance of this statement is shocking. It is an arrogant statement. It's an arrogant statement to the extent that it says that, look, we the few people who came to you to beg for your power, we are more sensible than all of you. And that all of you are foolish. You cannot think well, so we will think for you. So we will take the measures which will punish you, which will pain you, because it is in your interest. In fact, yesterday, another spokesperson of government put it even in a better language. I listened to him on radio. You know what he said? He said that when children are sick, and you want to give them bitter medicine, they will cry, they will resist. They don't even know that the bitter medicine is in their interest. So you have to force them to take the bitter medicine. I'm sure you know who I'm talking about. This same person went to liken the e-levy to giving a child an injection. That the child will cry, will run away. You have to catch the child. Sometimes even smack it to be able to give it an injection because the injection is painful. But in the long run, the painful injection is in the interest of the child. So all of a sudden, the people of Ghana have become children. And only the people in government are adults. We are all children. We can't think. We can't even recognize what is in our interest. We will be smacked on the buttocks and given injection, painful injection, because that painful injection is in our interest. What arrogance! What arrogance! What arrogance is this? But this is what we're experiencing. The people who govern us think that we are babies. We can't identify our own interests. They have to catch us, smack us, give us the painful injection. so that we may be cured of our malaria. This argument is sickening to say the least. Sickening to say the least. Now, the numbers game. First of all, we cannot tell whether the ambulance which was parked in Parliament House was empty. Nobody can tell. I don't think that anybody went to look into the ambulance. So it may very well be that what was parked in Parliament House was an empty ambulance. And if what was parked in Parliament House was an empty ambulance, what was the intention? The only intention could have been to get the so-called minority to walk out. Because if that ambulance were really empty, it would have meant that if the vote was cast, it would have been 136 against 136, and the bill would have collapsed. But we don't know. Maybe the sick man was still in the ambulance, and it could have been sprung on everybody. So the minority thought that, hey, they could have a situation of 136, 137. So for them, the best option was to boycott in order to prevent a quorum. But then we have the Speaker of Parliament, in whom many people have great confidence, including the so-called minority, who says that there was a quorum. How? He is the Speaker. He knows the rules in Parliament better than I do, better than perhaps all of us do. And he says that there was a quorum. Was there a quorum? If indeed there was a quorum, then the e-levy bill has been passed, and properly so, according to the Speaker. What is interesting is that the minority is not looking up to the Speaker for a pronouncement on this matter. They've gone beyond the Speaker to the Supreme Court, which is interesting. Now, the Supreme Court. Why the Supreme Court? Because only recently, the Supreme Court came out with a ruling on who can vote and who cannot vote in Parliament and the quorum and so on. And my goodness, the minority was livid with anger. In fact, I heard my own good friend Haruna Idrisu say that the Supreme Court was lending its support to the passage of the e-levy bill. Now, if the minority is convinced that the Supreme Court is in the corner of the e-levy bill, then why take the matter to the Supreme Court? Why take the matter to the Supreme Court, which is actually in boxing, how do they call it? The people in the corner who clean the face of the boxer and edge him on and so on. How do they call them? They are not the trainers. Oh. There's some handler in the corner there, you know. When the boxer comes and is sweating, they clean the sweat, they put some oil on his face and so on. They call them something. Now, if the Supreme Court is playing that role for the e-levy, what do you expect when you take this matter before the Supreme Court? But you know, I'm told that the Supreme Court has explicitly declared that you can only form a quorum for taking decisions in Parliament if you have 138 members present. Now, if the Supreme Court had taken that decision before, then perhaps there is some merit in taking this matter for the Supreme Court, so that all of us can now sit back and see how the Supreme Court can wangle its way out of this or confirm its earlier ruling. It will be an interesting thing to watch. Perhaps more interesting than Black Stars versus Nigeria. But that will be a spectacle to watch. And I'm waiting. If it's a boxing match, I'm going to get a ringside seat and watch the Supreme Court The Supreme Court said 138 is the quorum. Now there's 137. So how does 137 become 138? Or how does 138 become 137? I don't know. But we watch, listen, and see. It's going to be extremely interesting. Interesting days ahead. Now, Sena, let us assume that they go to the Supreme Court. And I've spoken to some lawyer friends of mine who say that practicing law is not like working mathematical equations. That the principles behind working mathematical equations are applicable in law. But in law, there are many other things which are also applicable. That one of the principles in law is the purposive interpretation of law. It is not mathematical. It is common sense. Common sense, looking at the implications of the decisions of the judiciary on society in its entirety. You understand? So the courts have many leeways. And in fact, in court, it is not always that 2 + 2 can be equal to 4. And the judges are clothed with so much power, a lot of it discretionary, that when you take matters before them, you cannot sit back and prejudge them. But whatever the Supreme Court decides in this matter will be very, very interesting. Now, I listened to the General Secretary of the National Democratic Congress. And he said, now you have your e-levy. You have told us that is the solution to all the problems, so solve the problems. Hey. So they will solve the problems. They have the e-levy. But my brother, let's just say that this matter goes to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court says that the minority, so-called minority, has no case, and the e-levy has been properly passed. What can we do? Sena, what can you do? What can you do?
Okay.
When the Supreme Court says, it has said. Unless you want to say some of the things that some people have said and they've been taken to court, I'm not ready to go to court, or I don't want to be charged with any crime.
We will just speak.
Unless you want to speak like those people who are before court, me, I don't want to go before court. Too. But when Supreme Court says, it has said. And when the Supreme Court said, that is it. So, we live under e-levy and wait for 2024. The only problem is that 2024 would not be just about e-levy. There will be so many other issues. 2024 will be about messaging. It will be about the concrete reality that people face and so on. E-levy may even be lost in 2024. The other dimension of this whole e-levy thing simply has to do with electoral promises and whether electoral promises are kept or not kept. I mean, I listened to His Excellency Dr. Alhaji Mahmood Bawumia pontificating about how evil it is to tax Momo. He says anybody who taxes Momo must be a terrible person. That person must be hating poor people and so on. That was an election promise. Has it been kept? Now we are told that because the threshold has been moved to more than 100 cedis, poor people have been taken out of the equation. I heard that also yesterday. I said, hey, so if you have 100 cedis in Ghana, you are rich. That's what they're saying. That if you have 100 cedis in Ghana, you are not poor, you are rich. Even poverty is being redefined. 100 cedis, what can you buy? In an economy where the price of kinky has risen to 3 cedis. So if you are in the house with your wife and 4 children, that's 6 people. And 1 ball of kinky is 3 cedis. And I know somebody who is very close to me who can eat 6 balls of kinky and after that drink 2 bottles of Fanta on top. You haven't brought in fish, you haven't brought in pepper and so on. And in this economy, our leaders can look us in the face and say, if you have 100 cedis, we are rich. God bless them.
Thank you.
Master, finish.
Thank you.
Add a few things, if I'm permitted.
Why won't I just read the message?
Okay,
Come back to
okay,
you
no
to
problem.
start with the
That's
state
fine.
of the nation
Yes,
for me.
okay,
Yeah, you can.
What to do?
Roger Sena Joy says this government is very amazing, is very unprincipled, lawless, and deviously manipulative, and thrives on public deceit in order to achieve their narrow aims. For this reason, the government lacks the sense of leadership of the 21st century. That's humility and all-embracing engagement with open-mindedness. There's Edie Gideon who says, I think those calling for the heads of the NDC caucus should rethink their position, call for the heads of the ones in power who formulated, introduced, and presented same in Parliament as such a theft bill, which is not a tax. The walkout of the NDC caucus was the right thing to have done. The government is clearly clueless, illogical, insensitive, and lacks direction to lead. The current finance minister is Ghana's #1 huge problem, and we must all consider that instead of blaming those who ought not to be blamed. I'm so sad and upset. That's coming from Edie Gideon Muntari. There's Masola Pabli Ayawaso who says, because Akufo-Addo was hell-bent on bringing more excruciating hardships on us, look at how he drags a sick MP to Parliament just to vote on the A-levy. That's how insensitive he is to our plies. Musa Abatwa. Yeah, possible. Musa Abatwa and says, Sena, majority of Ghanaians don't support E-levy. We've called for a referendum, but was ignored. Once President Akufo-Addo has assented to E-levy into law, even before ruling, which minority sought to nullify the illegality perpetrated against Ghanaian people, I'll withdraw all my money and close my Momo account because I'm not ready to be taxed double. We are already suffering, and I can't understand why this insensitive government continue making us suffer. The hardship in the system is too unbearable. Greetings to, okay, thank you, Mr. Abatwa. There's a Kwesi Kisi from Gomoankra says, Nana Akufo-Addo-led government blame game is becoming too much. Only a responsible president will do this. The Sena is full of political promise, but not the issue on the ground. If we are crying over Russia and Ukraine war, what will happen of the what would the people of Ukraine say? MPP never again. Thank you. Abbas Amogobo says the minority took a good decision by allowing the E-levy to be passed, else the clueless and corrupt government will link its failure to the E-levy. Now we are waiting for Agenda 111, Year of Rules, Table CD, Strong Economy, among others. There's also, okay, this one is from Black Tiger, who says, Sena, greetings to all. On Alhaji and Alhaji, please, Sena, tell Ghanaians to seek their economical freedom when it comes to E-levy from Chief Justice Eni Ebua, and see if he is the president or if it's for the president or for the people. That's coming from Black Tiger. A. Farouk says, good morning. The law of Ghana under the MPP's government led by President Nana Addo is not working. The politicization in the judiciary by government is reducing the trust Ghanaians have for the judiciary. Since the president ignored the law and signed the E-levy into law, our case in court. Okay. That's a very, you are rationing, you are jumping into conclusion. And I'm not sure I'm supposed to even read that. Hadi Pig Farm says, you mortgage all revenue resources for loans and now you're planning to mortgage the pockets and business accounts of the ordinary citizens. If this wicked, super incompetent and substandard family and friends government doesn't believe that there is hardship in the country, how can they solve the problem of hardship when you fill your head with pride? You will lack space for wisdom. And then finally, this is Fred, and I think Sweeney explained this. He's still asking why the NDC used the same method MPP used to rescind budget rejection. I think Sweeney explained that a bit earlier. This is the president speaking, the opening part of the State of the Nation. From my vantage point as President of the Republic, from the focus point as head of government, from the enviable position of a husband, a father, and a grandfather, I know that there's a general sense of anxiety in our nation at the moment. The Ghanaian people are anxious about the economy, the cost of living, income levels, jobs for young people, and even about issues on which we all thought we had achieved a national consensus. So we'll discuss the State of the Nation's address. I stand once again with Honorable Sohini, and he says he has a few things to get out of the way.
Yes, Sena, first of all, when Ankwesi was speaking and made reference to quorum, he kept referring to the majority side of the House as presenting 137. Our position is that there were 136 because the chieftaincy minister was at no point seen in the chamber, even if it is proven that he was in the ambulance. At no point was he in the chamber. And so at every time that they took a decision, they had 136 members of parliament, present. That is our argument. Now, secondly, I have said on other platforms that the whole, back and forth surrounding the e-levy reflects on the character of the leadership that we have in this country. And I'm very happy that Mr. Pratt made reference to the, opposition to VAT. And it is so ironic that this president was one of those who led that opposition against VAT, against a government with an absolute majority in parliament, a government that was led by a so-called military dictator. That so-called military dictator, God bless his soul, Jerry Rawlings, did not use the absolute numbers he had in parliament to bulldoze his way and ignore the calls by the opposition for the tax to be reviewed. He actually listened and withdrew VAT, engaged in extensive consultations, refined and dusted it up until it gained a certain level of acceptance before it was passed. So to have a president whose claim to power was fueled by the proclamation that he's a lover of democracy and that he's always been a Democrat, behave the way he's behaving, where it is his way or the highway, where the president's wish has to be granted, especially when it is his birthday, willy-nilly. It is the birthday gifts he wants, and however it is secured for him, he doesn't care whether 80% of Ghanaians are against that birthday wish he wants. Because according to research work done by researchers at the University of Ghana, 80% of Ghanaians are against the e-levy. The president says, I don't give a hoot. That is the birthday cake I want to cut. Give me the e-levy. So this whole back and forth tells us the dictatorial tendencies of President Akufo-Addo. And sometimes I dare say that perhaps if he had the opportunity of Rawlings, that he was an avowed critic of, I wonder the kind of legacy he would have left. Because he was an avowed critic of Rawlings, President Rawlings. And when you see how he believes by conduct that when you are in power, you are supposed to exhibit, like some of them have argued, some level of strength, showmanship. It tells you that if perhaps he was just envious of President Rawlings when he criticized him of exercising the level of control and authority that he's exercised as a military ruler and later a democratic ruler. Mr. Pratt also talks about borrowing, and when did we realize that borrowing was inferior to taxing the people? We realized it when the market shuts its doors to us. When we ran the economy down and the rating agencies rated us so poorly that it was no longer attractive to go out and borrow. And so we have to create another condition to still make ourselves attractive. And that is why the e-levy, we are told, will be collateralized if it is allowed to stand, so that we can engage in more borrowing. So it is not as if we have discovered that taxing people to bring about development is better than borrowing. It's simply because we have no option. We have to tax the people so we can open more doors to borrow some more. A friend of mine made this observation that it is only in Ghana that you will find 2 investment bankers in charge of the Ministry of Finance, and that nowhere in the world will you find a president committed to developing a country and improving the economy, put the economy in the hands of investment bankers. And people who are into investment will testify to this observation that is being made and how its impact is so negative on our economy today, given the level of borrowing that we have engaged in. And it is not surprising that these investment bankers actually have companies that have a say in the borrowing that we do. Blackstar and Data, the 2 investment bankers, own these ones. And Mr. Pratt talks about, the tricks that were used. Yes, in fact, I walked to the Minister of Road and asked why he was in the chamber when he gave me an invitation letter to join the president to commission the Tamale, overpass that they have christened an interchange. He was in the chamber. The Minister of Road was sitting in the chamber. Minister of Road, he was sitting in the chamber, but he expected us, MPs from Tamale, to be with the president because he signed the invitation letter to us. In fact, with tickets to go and join the president to cut the sword. That wasn't the only thing. Mr. Bernard Ahiafo was on his way abroad with his committee chairman, Mr. Enyima, who told him he wanted to pass to Dubai and do something, so he should take the lead. Only for him to arrive in London and met Bejra running back to Ghana because he was also in Israel. And he said, "Where are you going?" He said, "Oh, I'm going for," and my chairman said, "Hey, we are all wanted back in Ghana because the people want to bring the e-levy tomorrow." So his chairman came back to Ghana and told the MPP that Bernard Ahiafo, he has, away, he has dispatched him. So on the day, in fact, they were arguing that Bernard Ahiafo was not in until he showed up, to their surprise. The tricks that they engage in fact, one of our colleagues, Sisala East, Mohammed Sukaro, hasn't been well, underwent a surgery. They actually offered him a ticket to go abroad for further treatment. Leadership heard about it and had to stop it. And he was in the chamber, in pain. But I'm sure now that this is over. So a lot of tricks. Mama Yaga had to fly in from Sena to take part in the whole process. So members of parliament have made, on the minority side, have done everything possible to prevent this government from imposing this hardship on the people. And that is why it breaks my heart that some people still have doubts about the commitment of the minority, when it comes to standing with the people against the government's decision to impose hardship on them. It is sometimes amazing to me that people either feel shy or afraid to criticize the government. Because, as we say in the band, now who owns Yabala? That's Sena. Who owns Yabala? If you want to know who owns Yabala, I mean, if you know who owns Yabala, you don't even question who owns the goods that she's carrying. So if you are worried about hardships, who has brought about the funeral? If you are worried about the funeral, who has brought about the funeral? Blame the one who brought about the funeral, and not the one who has not participated in the celebration of the funeral. Who caused the death? It's the government that brought the e-levy. It's the government that is determined to get the people to pay the e-levy. Assuming the minority even makes a mistake in not being able to stop the government. Why hold the minority responsible? It's just like in the appointments of ministers. I was like, why? The president has the authority to appoint and disappoint ministers. Why blame the minority for not stopping the ministers and leave the president alone? You voted the president to give you best ministers to run the country. And he gave you less than competent ones. So attack him. He's the one you voted to give you the best. He didn't give you the best. If the minority, was unable, despite all the sacrifices that we made, to stop the government from passing the e-levy, blame the government for being very committed, determined to impose hardships on you, and not, the minority. Now, that's my final point on it, except just to also say that until the Supreme Court, rules, hopefully, in favor of the minority, we expect the government, since the president has, in a hurry, signed the e-levy bill into law, to now provide us all the things that they said they will provide us with, starting with our salaries. For the first time, many of us are having to receive salaries in the first and second week of the, preceding month. That is unacceptable. In fact, the government itself came out with a timetable of, salary payments for the year. They were supposed to have paid by 25th March by their own timetable. I'm a member of parliament. Today is what? 3rd, right? Or 2nd? 2nd. I've not received my salary yet. And I know many of my colleagues haven't. And many other workers have not received their salaries. In fact, there's this joke on social media about someone who has received a notification from ADB that he has over-checked his account's balance, because I'm sure he keeps checking every minute to see if it has dropped, and it's not dropping. So they should start with paying our salaries on time, then give us the jobs they promised, then construct the roads, even though we all know those were lies. Why? The road fund alone owes more than 8 billion Ghana cedis. And yet this levy is expected to raise about 6 billion. And given the rate at which people are deactivating their Momo accounts, and even before the passage, the drop had already started. You are not confident that they can actually meet this. But they said that it was the cocoa medicine that they were going to use to treat all other ailments in our bodies. And now, until the Supreme Court sets it aside, they have the e-levy. Let's see how they govern. Now, on the President's State of the Nation address. So now you're right. I mean,
to be very brief on that.
Yes, I'll try. I'll try. Now, you started with his 5th paragraph when he said that the Ghanaian people are anxious about the economy and the cost of living, income levels, jobs for young people, and even about issues on which we all thought we had achieved a national consensus. It's commendable that the president acknowledges the fact that we are anxious about the cost of living and income levels. It's commendable. However, he failed to highlight the source of our anxiety. And perhaps it's because he doesn't know the source of our anxiety. He just can feel our anxiety. Why? Because he doesn't shop in the markets that we shop in now. Even Dr. Mahmoud Baumia, who used to visit Malata market and do his economics, has since abandoned the Malata market. And so they don't understand, they don't appreciate the source of our, anxiety. I'll just share a few with you. Sena, just last year, government fertilizer was sold for 80 Ghana cedis. 80 Ghana cedis. Guess how much it's going for this year? 320 Ghana cedis. 320 Ghana cedis from the same government. That is the price they have given the the suppliers. 80 Ghana cedis last year. You're talking about 320 Ghana cedis this year. Sena, hot oven bread. I like my bread in the morning. Hot oven bread. That used to be sold for 2 Ghana cedis in 2016. It's 10 Ghana cedis today. 10. Not 4 Ghana cedis, not 5, not 6 Ghana. 10 Ghana cedis. Gary. Alonka. 5 Ghana cedis before he came into office. Today is 20 Ghana cedis and 25 Ghana cedis, depending on where you are buying it from. A bag of maize, you can't even touch. In some cases, it has gone up to about 300 or 400 Ghana cedis. A bag of maize was less than 200 Ghana cedis in 2016. Cement. The price of cement. And fuel. The highest we paid for a liter was less than 4 cedis for any of the fuel products. Less than 4 cedis. Today we are paying 11 cedis per liter. 11 cedis per liter. So these, yet salaries have remained the same or have seen insignificant increases like the 4% announced. And when you talk about it, you are told that, oh, the world is in a crisis and prices are going up everywhere because there was COVID and there is Ukraine war, Russia war against Ukraine. Sena. Mali, Burkina Faso, Guinea have recently witnessed coup d'etats. The president and his colleagues were in Ghana recently to discuss the situation in Mali. Sena. So apart from COVID, apart from the Ukrainian war, they have had internal instability. Yet, guess what? Mali inflation is at 4.5%. Burkina Faso is 10%. Guinea is 11%. Ivory Coast, our neighbor, is 4.6%. Ghana, on paper, is 15% plus. 15.7%. We don't have an internal war. Okay, but remember that these countries were also here. Mali was here when COVID was there. They are still here that Ukraine war is here. So when they tell you prices of goods are rising around the world, ask them at what rate compared to our situation. And that's why I said on paper. Because the 15%, 15.7% on paper is not even what you see when you go to Agbogboloshi or when you go to Makola. So many people today will tell you that when they are going to the market or when they go to the market this week, the following week, they are unable to predict how much they will need to buy the same goods that they bought the previous week. And it is true. I have a friend who says that nowadays when I buy stuff and people ask me how much I bought it, I tell them to also just go because I don't want to deceive them. I may give them my price and by the time they get there, the price would have been different and they think I deceived them. That is the reality in our economy. And that is the source of the anxiety the president perhaps is unaware of, even though he can feel our anxiety. And that is why a lot of us are worried that after 4 days of brain cracking, like Mr. Pratt says. The solutions that were announced appear to suggest that we are stupid people. Because, for example, how can you tell us that you are not going to buy new vehicles when it was one of the first promises you made when you came into office? Do you assume that we have forgotten so soon? I mean, and I do know, Sena, that in fact, if you speak to some of the ministers, they are with us in Parliament. If you speak with some of the ministers, they will tell you that since, I think, October, many of them have already not received anything from the finance ministry. So when the finance minister comes to tell you he's cutting expenditure by 20%, even his colleague ministers are laughing. Because they know that even before this time, you had already cut their expenditure by not giving them any releases. Sena, the president also talks about the misappropriation, the corruption, the irregularities that we see with the COVID expenditure, for which reason they are blocking any form of investigation into the expenditure. And he creates the impression that it was okay because we were surprised by the COVID and were only interested in saving lives. Sena, I was scandalized when I heard the president say, for example, I think that's paragraph 11, that there was a general consensus that we should spend all our energies and resources on protecting lives. I remember, for example, the discussion about PPEs 2 years ago. Nobody was asking or was interested in how much they cost. Just find them for our health workers. And that was the only consideration. I wonder how many people remember the cost of the first facials. And he goes on and on, setting the stage to completely tell us that we should understand that they misappropriated funds. That's what he's telling the international community. And us, that we shouldn't care that they awarded contracts to people to supply things that those people didn't supply or undersupplied but got overpaid. That we shouldn't worry. And that it was the times. So the family and friend deals that were given to people who have made a lot of millions, passing through their accounts like my sister here was saying, it's okay, we must tolerate it because it happened under COVID. Sena, he also says that we couldn't have predicted the virus. Yes, we couldn't have. But you see, if we were doing some of the things that we even promised the people that we would do when we come into office, we would have been in a better place to deal with the COVID than we were when it hit. For example, when President Mahama and the NDC thought about creating the stabilization fund, it came in handy when COVID hit. Government had to depend on it before they mobilized external revenue. That is visionary. When he promised the people of Ghana that if he became president, he was going to ensure that districts without hospitals all got hospitals. When he came into office, if he saw it as an important promise and implemented that promise, he wouldn't have had to now promise 88 hospitals that have translated now into Agenda 111. And then he shamelessly says that we forgot of our health infrastructure and that we were prompted and reminded about it when COVID hit. No, it is simply because you are irresponsible and you did not mean the promises you gave until COVID hit, and then you are now pretending to be doing something. Sena, let me wrap up because I can see time is of the essence.
I was just going to say that.
He talked about mining, and because I am on the Lands and Forestry Committee, I wish I could spend some time, but I'll just touch on mining and not the Green Ghana part, even though we have exposed already the claim that 10,000 kilometers of roads was constructed or has been constructed under him. We have exposed that is a lie, complete lie. The ministry itself says they cannot provide the data to that. In fact, the 4,000 roads that they claim that they have done in their own documents shows that only about 68 kilometers are actually new constructions. What they have added to make up the number 4,000 are pothole patches reshaping, yes, sports improvement, reshaping, and all those things that we do every year. So we have exposed that. Again, the Green Ghana, he talks about 7 million trees being planted, yet his minister on the floor of parliament said 4.89 trees were planted. You don't know which is which. What you can rather suspect is that perhaps seedlings were bought because, you know, some procurement had to take place. Wherever the extra seedlings are, we are unable to tell. But at least I'm sure payments were made for the 7 million. The minister tells us that 4.89 million trees were planted. But finally on the mining, he says that he indicated last year what will happen, and that a national dialogue on illegal mining was held under the auspices of the Lands and Natural Resources Ministry in Accra, as well as 2 other regional ones in Kumasi and Tamale. I'm interested in this, Sena, because after all these seminars around the country and in Accra, we are aware of the practice still ongoing. In fact, just yesterday, there are reports of even the military and some galamseyers clashing, resulting in the death of some people. Sena, my worry more has to do with the cost of these seminars, which the president did not tell the people of Ghana. So he says, a national dialogue on illegal mining was held under the auspices of the Lands and Natural Resources Ministry in Accra, as well as 2 other regional ones in Kumasi and Tamale. Will you believe, Sena, that we spent more than 10 million Ghana cedis on conferences and workshops to decide how to deal with galamsey? 10 million Ghana cedis on just conferences and dialogue series to determine what we should do about the fight against galamsey. And this is the document from the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources presented to the committee during the budget estimates consideration, where we were told that the national dialogue on small-scale mining that was held in Accra, that the president speaks eloquently about here, cost the taxpayer 2,140,000 Ghana cedis. That conference at, you know, the Accra Conference Center, where they brought 2,140,000 Ghana cedis. The regional dialogue on small-scale mining for Northern and Middle Belt cost the taxpayer 3.7 million Ghana cedis, 3,764,120 Ghana cedis. The regional tours, engagement and interactions with houses of chiefs and regional security councils cost the nation 5,400,000 Ghana cedis. All put together, you are talking about more than 10 million Ghana cedis on conferences and workshops and dialogues to decide what we should do with galamsey. I mean, what again do we need to know about how to deal with galamsey that we have to expend this amount of money?
Okay, Sena, thank you.
On determining ways of doing that.
Before I come to you, just Kojo Chumboafo says, when I hear people talking about the NDC caucus's apparent complicity in the passing of the e-levy, I laugh out loud. The NDC caucus in Parliament has braved prosecution, persecution, pogrom, and anything that you can think of, including a wall-climbing unit of the police force being forced in order to serve a criminal summons, whose purpose was to ensure that one MP doesn't participate in voting. This is a government that carted an MP who had become paraplegic as a result of a debilitating illness, and they haven't done enough. What did we want them to do? Deliver their own hairs on a plate? Why aren't we blaming the tyrant who passed this retrograde lampu at all cost? Why are we blaming Sean Boy, the birthday boy, who must have his toxic tax as a birthday present so that he can collateralize his e-levy for his cousin, the finance minister, to benefit personally? Why aren't we blaming the pastors and religious community who go to President Mahama and command him to order the NDC MPs to pass the e-levy? But one fine day, it will all pass. There's one thing history tells me: everything that has a beginning has an end. And then he says, congratulations to your debutant lawyer, Beatrice Anamfio. What a debut. What a solid debut. Now, I know, is your name Anamfio? Ah, okay. I was going to say Kojo was up to some mistake. Please go ahead.
Okay. Sena, I would say that the State of the Nation's address, as we saw the president deliver last Thursday, I believe, for me, was just a cocktail of deception interlaced with a lot of cliche expressions with no concrete statistics to show what really is the state of our nation and what the president intends to do about the current state of our nation's address. I say this because after the speech, I took the pain to go through the president's State of the Nation's address for 2017, for 2018, for 2019, 2020, 2021, and compare it to the recent one. And you realize that the address is simply an admission of a government that has failed the people of Ghana. You know, in the 2019 specifically, the president touted certain things as his achievement. In fact, one thing that even caught my attention was that the president indicated that they had even reduced debt to GDP ratio from 56.6% to 54.6%. So the president indirectly was saying that in 2018, he had even reduced the debt. In 2022, the president did not tell us what happened, and he moved us from the 54.6% that he touted as an achievement in 2018 to over 81%. What happened within a space of just 3 years? That the country has been mismanaged so much that the president could not mention the debt to GDP ratio in the 2022 State of the Nation's address. The president touted increase in salaries of workers to about 10%. In the 2022, we are not being told why there is even no increase from, the 4%, when inflation is even hedged at 15.7%. The president touted upgrade by S&P as one of the great achievements, that the S&P said we had moved from B minus to B, and it was a great achievement. In fact, he even added that the visit by the managing director of IMF to Ghana was historic, and it was because of his good economic management skills. And today, he did not talk about why we have been downgraded. And so if you do a comparative analysis of the speeches or of the State of the Nation address as has been delivered by the president in the past, and the one that was recently delivered, you can only see that from the president's own analysis and speeches, the country is retrogressing. And I have a difficulty with the speech writers of the president, or the people who manage the affairs of this government, because it appears that there is no attempt to be candid or be honest with the Ghanaian people. The shifting tongue and the flip-flopping, even with official statistics in government, is quite worrying. And it appears that it is because there is no plan. So for every year, read the mood of the people, just come and throw some statistics and figures at them, and everybody gets excited. Honorable Sweeney and Uncle Chrissy Pratt will just, say whatever they want to say. The next week, we'll see whatever they want to see again, and we'll give them a new data. And why do I say that? In 2018, the president, in his State of the Nation address, in the area of education, indicated that they were going to build 10 TVETs, Technical and Vocational Education Training Institute. They were going to build 10. In 2019, he said they were now going to build 32. In fact, in 2020, there was no mention of TVET. In 2021, we are told they will build 10. And last Thursday, the president says 9 have begun in various phases out of the 10. My question is, what then is the plan of the government in education? If your own historical analysis of your speeches shows that there is no coherence. In the same vein, when you take COVID expenditure, in the 2021 budget, we were told that the COVID expenditure for 2020 alone, which is monies which have been utilized, was 18.8 billion. Only 2020. Yesterday, on Thursday, the president says the entire COVID expenditure from 2020 to 2022, as at the time he was delivering the speech, was 17.7. Meanwhile, when you take the 2022 budget, we are told that in 2021, COVID expenditure was around 2.4. So if you do the analysis, you have about 20.25. So why these shifting terms? If the president's, the data from an official record like budget, and I'm not talking about budget as in the estimate, because the budget captures both the estimate and what had been utilized in the previous year. So these are monies that have been utilized, and the whole office of the president, Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Health, the data just can't synchronize. It's not even a margin of error of +1 -1, which you will say that happens in tabulation. But these are, and we are talking about money. So even if the margin is some 2.5 billion, it is so much. And for me, I am worried because it appears something is amiss. It appears that governance has been reduced so much to a PR gimmick that for every time, let's just say something to the Ghanaian people. Let's just keep the debates going. Let our focus be on this discussion and not that discussion, and not really what is being done. Now, in the area of security and jobs, for the president who touted, his achievements in previous years to be security and job, copiously missing in the 2022 State of the Nation address is an issue of security. The only thing the president is concerned about are coups happening in the sub-region. But the president is not concerned about the fact that elements within the Ghana Police Service, who are members of his invisible and Delta forces, have become robbers who are robbing bullion vans, are attacking citizens. He is not concerned about the personal safety, issues of food security. Uncle Pratt just told us about how much cassava we import. We have a lot of food prices is just skyrocketing, and that's a threat. Food security is a security threat, and copiously missing in the president's address is food security. The president is not concerned. The president is concerned about a certain planting for food for jobs, where we are told that donkeys practically had to carry the fertilizers to cross borders. They could count the donkeys and the number of fertilizers, but they could not stop the donkeys from crossing the borders. And I am worried because the president is 78. If all things being equal, my children and young people may not come and experience the president. So what legacy, even if for nothing at all, the president should ask himself that if you mention President Rawlings, you have one thing to associate him with. You mention President Mills, you have one thing to associate. You mention President Mahama, President Kufuor, and we all, despite the fact that we belong to different political parties, we all associate presidents, their regime, with something. At a point, they were calling President John Mahama the Commissioner General. Why? Because we associated him with commissioning projects which had been completed. What exactly is the legacy of this president than human rights abuses, than practically destroying every perceived independent state institution? Look at what happened in Parliament. Clerks of Parliament are even deliberately marking members of the minority group absent just so that it will please a certain president because of the birthday. So I think that really the State of the Nation address, there was nothing inspiring in it. There was nothing that shows that this is a committed government that understands the plight of people, except from what you read. It appears the president has been listening to the mood of the country, so he thinks we are anxious. And so even though he cannot really experience what our anxiety is, he acknowledges that we are anxious. But young people are anxious. The number of CVs you receive from people who are much as qualified as people who are working, but they cannot have jobs to do. Whatever it is, we are really anxious. And the government must stop talking. They must stop reading nice speeches. The president should not be concerned in shading people in his speeches, in just using expressions and cliches we've heard over the time, and get to work. Because even if they are of the opinion that they will be out of power in 2025 on 7 January, they owe a duty that as long as they have the mandate of the people, they must deliver and make the lives of people better. So I would say that the speech is nothing but the usual rhetorics we've heard. It is as though it's an amended manifesto. What I said in 2016 and 2020, because of COVID, I cannot do them, so forgive me. Now we are even told that their famous Agenda 111, which should have been their trump card to salvation, can only be completed on 7 January 2025. What a joke.
Thank you. David Sena is saying, please ask Honorable Sena whether the minority can't take action against the majority for ambushing them with the business of the day on which the e-levy was passed by Parliament. Additionally, I wish to advise the minority to scrutinize all invitations by government in future, especially when there is a very important issue before Parliament for which their votes will be required. That's David Sena. And before I come to Mr. Pratt, this one from Shaggy in Nima says Kufuor himself is made out of illegality. So everything about him is illegal. May Allah forgive us for voting for career criminals in government. Uncle Bessie.
The State of a Nation address could have been a very good address. It had concessions. I mean, for the first time, I heard the president say that since 1992, all the political parties and leaders have contributed significantly to the development of Ghana. I heard him call for consensus building and so on. And then in the middle of it, we went back to what he always does, instigating partisanship and so on, you know. Even his acknowledgement of the state of the national economy was spoilt in the end by claims of successes which are not borne out by the facts and so on. I think that this was a poor attempt at doing what all of us have wanted him to do all the time. Maybe next year he'll do better.
Well, thank you.
At doing what he should have been doing over the years. I like the way Mr. Pratt puts it, because you see, even on the passage of the e-levy, remember the appropriation was passed before the e-levy. When the appropriation was passed and he was in Kumasi, he singled out MPP members of Parliament and thanked them for passing appropriation. Even though there was no rancor in Parliament over the appropriation, it was done on consensus. But on the e-levy, he actually thanked the whole of Parliament in this state for passing the e-levy.
Well, positive thing in my dinner says, I personally agree with the NDC caucus for staging a walkout in Parliament. We should rather be blaming those who introduced and brought up this killer tax bill called e-levy, not the NDC. In fact,
I think that the public suspicion is grounded. What the public suspect may not be true, but the history of Parliament itself fuels the suspicion. Do you remember how the seats for cash scandal was handled?
Yeah.
and many other things which have happened in Parliament. Even the approval of ministers and so on. All of this have contributed to this situation. Indeed, what our parliamentarians ought to realize is that people are watching and that they have to put on their best performance all the time, not sometimes. That's all.
Thank you. In the meantime, we get Uruguay, Portugal. Forgotten the two teams that we're playing. But everybody seems Korea.
Japan.
No, I think it's Korea, not Japan. If we had Japan, we'll be in big trouble.
Yeah, it's
Korea. But even Korea is very good. South Korea is very good. So we have
They're looking at World Cup and
yeah, we have 3 teams. But everybody is saying that we get revenge. So we are going to World Cup. Then why won't we just organize a friendly match, beat Uruguay, and then we forget the World Cup? But that's the group we are in. We are in Uruguay, Portugal, Korea. Those are 3 very good teams. On a good day, those are 3 very good teams. So that's the team we have. We don't have much time, but briefly.
I think that
World Cup.
Yes.
I think that we should not exaggerate the performance of our team. We must congratulate them. They fought like I have never seen them fight, you know, in recent past for us to secure this qualification. We must congratulate them. But I don't think that performance should lead us to begin to exaggerate the capacity of the team and the ability of the team to do wonders in Qatar. After all, this was a Ghana-Nigeria match. A Ghana-Nigeria match is always like Accra House of Okotoko. It defies all the statistics, and it brings out the best of all players on both sides. So it becomes very difficult to be used as a yardstick to determine, you know, the strength of a team, because it's Ghana-Nigeria. I mean, that's how it's always been. And so I think that we are lucky that it went our way. We should take advantage of the opportunity of qualification to put our house in order very well, and not go to Qatar just to waste the taxpayers' money again. We must make our going to Qatar more meaningful, so that people may not even raise questions that much with regard to the costs of organizing the team and taking the team to Qatar.
I hear we get $12 million. I think that should be enough. The qualification bonus should take care of the
You
budget.
think so? It will not.
Calculate, because now look at the CD to the dollar. It will be enough. Beatrice.
I just don't like the sense that our team is good. Yeah, they may be good. They fought well, but it was Ghana-Nigeria. That's what we expected.
I remember that I stopped being very emotional about the Black Stars in our last match against Uruguay. So if you look at the group permutation and all that, we can only but wish the Black Stars very well. We wish them all the best. But like Honorable Suini said, we shouldn't be too overconfident, because sometimes no expectations, no disappointment. If we have very higher expectations, that's when we can eat our fufu. So we wish them all the best, but I don't have too much of a higher expectation of them, except that I will be happy if they make us proud.
I have no comments.
Well, but you can watch Mr. Proud this evening at 8 p.m. He gets to interview the Dr. Saeed. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is it Khatib Sadeh? Is that
Sadeh.
Yeah, okay. He is a Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs, Islamic Republic of Iran, and spokesperson for the ministry. That's a very high-ranking member of the Iranian government. He speaks to him today. You've already seen excerpts of the interview. It's on at 8 p.m. on Pan-African Television. Will be live on Facebook. So join that feed. Very, very important. Also, there will be diplomatic affairs at 4. There's progressive women at 6 before Mr. Pratt comes on. So do stick and stay with Pan-African Television. As for Margot's birthday cake, that one there. Yeah, Margaret answered.
She's expecting a birthday cake from you.
That's the problem.
And let me also wish her a happy birthday. She has a very fantastic smile. That's what I like about her. So.
I remember when I used to listen to her and I met the lady, I said, these are two different people. But she had the fire about her that was. But when you meet the person, it's very, very nice. She's nice until she starts firing. Well, so a happy birthday to Magenta. Say, Mago, all the best to you. Well, my name is Sena Nombo. A big thank you to Uncle Kwesi. I always want to pursue him. He's the General Secretary of the Socialist Movement of Ghana, joining us today on the show once again. Wonderful to have Beatrice and lawyer, and then Theo, lawyer, who joined us this morning. And of course, Alasan Sweeney, always a pleasure having you in the studio. In fact, you are one of those who, when you come into the studio, I shouldn't even be thanking you. You and Alhaji ABF saying you owe it to this program to be here. Anytime we'll call on you. Yes. So it was wonderful to see all of you. A big thank you to the crew at Pan-African Television. Big thank you to our various affiliate stations. I forgot to say that if you go to Honorable Ahiafo's constituency, he's member of Parliament for Akachi South anyway. You go to his constituency, in Akachi, they have Shine 96.9 FM currently tuning to us. A big thank you to Sela Radio in Dabala, 97.1 tuning currently. You can listen to us on any of those platforms. A big thank you to Ahuto 92.3 FM. A big thank you to Global FM. A big thank you to Volta 1 TV and all our affiliate stations. If you join us via Facebook, via our handles, Pan-African Television, YouTube, Pan-African TV, we're grateful to you for your contribution to the show. You make the show richer. Wish you enjoy the rest of the weekend. Have a fruitful week. And we'll meet same time next Saturday on the mother of all talk shows, Alhaji and Alhaji.
Into the land of freedom. He's the Redeemer.
General Suleiman was assassinated in Iraq. What do you think has been the consequences of that assassination?
That assassination changed the destiny of our region. Trump administration